Eenie, my Kemetic and pagan peeps, it's Mary again. I guess it's a bit sooner. I usually make videos every few months, uh, especially since it's kind of difficult with my situation. I live with other people, so sometimes it's hard to keep the noise down. And in this case, it's probably going to be the same thing. My husband has been stuck at home due to the whole quarantine or isolation lockdown thing. So he's going a little stir crazy, and even though I asked folks or here that to keep things down while I record, I got no promises. So you never know. You might hear some shouting or something in the background, but pay no mind. I'm just gonna keep the camera rolling. I hope everybody's doing well in light of given circumstances. Um, it's been I can't imagine what it's been like for a whole lot of people around. I have friends who are unemployed now due to the shutdowns and lockdowns here in my area. But thankfully, I haven't seen so many cases or people who have come down with it or anything like that, who I know personally. Um, but I imagine that might, change in the given weeks because I went out yesterday to get a few things. Like I was gonna make cloth masks for everybody here in my household, and like the stores I went to are packed. Um, it was kind of disconcerting. It's like I know, I came out myself, so it's like I'm not one to judge, but at the same time, why is everybody out? I thought we were supposed to do the social distancing thing. So it's like maybe we'll start seeing more cases around here. I don't know. Um, but for everybody else, I hope you're doing well or getting by the best you can. And yeah, kind of brings up some stuff because I went, or I didn't go. I was here in my extra room, my extra ritual room that I have. Because Kemetic Reform, we did this decade festival celebration, and a lot of the prayers and divination and things like that were focused obviously around the current situation at hand with the coronavirus pandemic. And some people, it was really interesting because people were talking about, well, why is this happening? Um, is it due to any kind of specific forces, especially like with the Netru, or other things that are, I guess you can be considered occult or supernatural. And so it kind of brought up some interesting questions in my mind because a lot of people have been talking about that throughout various sources on like social media or um, online in general. Haven't seen it so much on YouTube, but then again, I don't watch a whole lot of pagan videos. I guess I just either, I like more comedic um, uh, focused stuff. So I don't see a whole lot of that, obviously, for, because not so many people are comedic. And I don't know. I guess I just like uh, seeing uh, information in that regard in a different format. Either it's like book form or written form or online, where I'm talking on like a forum or a Facebook page with people about it. With more written word, I guess you could say, rather than video form. But it's been very interesting because there's been quite a few people who have come across either pagan or Kemetic or, in general, talking about, well, why is the coronavirus happening? Or why is this whole pandemic, happening in the first place? Is a particular deity responsible for it? Or is it a wrath of God sort of thing where, we're being punished for our actions and things? And there's been a lot of conjecture in that regard, or argumentation. Some people, do think that, and other people are like, no, the gods would never do this sort of thing. They're not evil. Um, so I guess I just wanted to talk about it and talk about the various perspectives I've heard online and my own take, I guess you could say. So um, Sharon and a couple other people were talking about that during the whole decade ritual thing that we had. It was on YouTube Live, and it was also Facebook Live. I don't remember the Facebook application or the app so much, the name of that, but I was on that. And so Sharon, she was citing more along the lines of an increase in chaos. She didn't go to elaborate too much into it because obviously we're in the middle of a writ, so it was sort of brief, but she was mentioning that certain things like social distancing and washing your hands frequently and different things like that will bring us more along the lines in Ma'at. So I was thinking in her mind it's more of an unbalance sort of thing that um, is causing this. So, I think that's a pretty interesting perspective. And some other person, I forget who it was on the discussion, she was talking about the destruction of the environment and um, just in general that humans, we like to think that we're powerful and that we can change so much in the world. And yeah, we can. But at the same time, we're still subject to the force of nature. And the coronavirus, is, I guess, is a sort of a reminder that we aren't as powerful as we think we are. And that's when Sharon interjected with her um, perspective on the whole matter. Um, Otherwise, I haven't seen so much on Facebook about people, talking about it in a, pagan perspective manner. Most of the time, yeah, I've seen a lot of coronavirus memes, I'll tell you that much, and they're fun. But most of the time, people are more along the lines of, public service announcements, things that we can do, or things to make light of the situation so we can all laugh at it and endure it a lot better. But like on Tumblr, I've, gone to the fray and try to watch, all the drama going on Tumblr. And there, I guess there's a lot more argumentation or arguments going on Tumblr about it. A lot of people like to, cite it towards Apollo or some other Loki too, saying, oh, our systems are imperfect, and they're pointing it out by using the coronavirus or something like that. And I find that more suspect myself, um, especially considering so many of the people on Tumblr like to blame capitalism for the coronavirus, and it's like, come on, guys, come on. Um, but there are other people out there who will say, well, it's not really any particular deity's fault. The deities aren't doing this. They're not. Oh, some of them are saying that the deities aren't like powerful enough, I guess, or they're not responsible for these sorts of things in the sense that uh, I'm not sure if it's necessarily that they don't have the power to do it, or if they're just like letting things happen or take its course like 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 nothing, or like nobody's really in control of it. Uh, but I find that kind of suspect myself. But then again, I don't have a whole high opinion of a lot of people on Tumblr. I'll give you that much. Maybe you like Tumblr, or maybe you like the people on Tumblr. And there are good people on Tumblr, but there's a lot of crazy on Tumblr, let me tell you. Um, and in any case, for the most part, I think all these ideas have some validity. I mean, the whole idea that maybe nobody's in control of it, it's like, sure, fine, I'll give you that. Or, Sharon's or the other person, I forget who it was, uh, talking on the whole Facebook decade ritual thing. I think they had some really valid points, especially with Sharon. It's like, yeah, as long as we take these measures to, you know, lessen the curve and stop the spread of coronavirus, we can bring things back into balance, back into Ma'at. I definitely agree with that. But in my own perspective, I do think that the Netru are in control of this and they are causing this, but it's not, a malicious or evil act. My take is, and I've probably mentioned this before, there's the whole idea of the problem of evil and are deities benevolent or omnibenevolent, and other philosophical takes on that. And my thought is that the Natru are not omnibenevolent. That's, I think, more of a monotheistic kind of thing. Um, You hear it like with the argument of like Saint Anselm, and the ontological argument for the existence of God, that omnibenevolence is a sort of an attribute or prerequisite for something being God or an entity being God. Um, and I would not agree with that. And if I mentioned in some of my really older videos about the problem of evil, and um, if a God is all powerful, they would have the ability to get rid of any kind of harm or evil things in the world. Or if they don't do it, then they're not omnibenevolent. Well, I don't think that polytheists have this kind of problem, because we understand that gods aren't omnipotent. They can't do one particular god can't do absolutely everything. And then our gods aren't omnibenevolent either. Like, you have the myths in ancient Egypt, especially the destruction of humanity, where Ra sent his eye to destroy humanity, or at least punish humanity, and she did it so much that Ra was like, "Hey, hold on, I don't want everybody to die." And they had to have her drink beer and get so drunk she was like forgot about the whole thing. Uh, so the gods, in my mind, um, they're not always looking 100% into never harming us ever. So when it comes to certain natural disasters like earthquakes and wildfires and floods and different things like that, I think the gods can definitely be either responsible or at least have some hand in it. Um, just because they're not always gonna keep us safe and always totally away from harm. Um, that's not their major goal for us, or for anything in the universe, really. Um, and to me, Sekhmet is like the goddess's disease. And I imagine for a lot of other people she is too, because it's not like UPG or anything. It's been established that Sekhmet was one of her titles was the Lady of Pestilence. And people would pray to her if they were sick. Her priests were physicians and people who did a lot of healing. And there were rituals like to Sekhmet Mut, one of those composite goddesses, where they would do like 365 days a year rituals to assuage her anger. So one of those things that would not happen were plagues and pestilence. And I've even read in some sources, I don't know if it's necessarily true, that they would coat her um, statues in anthrax in order to protect them. So if people, got their hands on the statue or something like that, they would quite possibly come down with anthrax. So definitely, she's a war goddess. She's a god of pestilence. Her breath was supposed to be the desert wind. She's also one of the goddesses in the destruction of humanity myth, who purportedly almost wiped out humanity. So Sekhmet has never been, a sunshine and lollipops kind of goddess. I mean, definitely she does have a lot of positive aspects in terms of protection and healing and different things like that. But to only focus on those sorts of things about Sekhmet, I think you're just kind of looking at the nice side of things, being a Pollyanna, I guess you could say, and not recognizing that she is a goddess of plagues and pestilence, and she's can also be a very fierce goddess in my experience. But I don't usually talk about these sorts of things because I don't want to, force my opinions on other people. And usually I like to keep my faith or experiences that I have kind of private, because, they're my experiences. It's my, conversations in between me and my deities. I don't want to, be one of those people who are like, you have to believe the same way I do or else blah, I usually try and use reason and stuff instead to try and sway or persuade people to my opinion or to my perspective, rather than, God, or this God said so, so you have to believe what I say. I don't like that at all. But in this case, I wanted to share. It's like I've done a few meditations, trying to ask Sekhmet, like, what's this whole thing going on? And every time I see a lioness hunting uh, packs of wildebeest or zebras or other kind of prey animals or herd animals like that. And so, in my opinion on the matter, is that this isn't really a personal kind of event going on. It's not a wrath of God kind of thing where we're being punished because of a particular sin or another. It's not because, there are like Christians who are like, oh, we're being sinners and we're, allowing gay people to get married or something like that, or out of wedlock births to happen or something. And so this is why we have the coronavirus. It's like, no, I don't believe that at all. Or in a pagan way, a lot of people I've heard say, oh, well, this is the gods punishing us for destroying the environment. No, no, I don't believe that. I mean, for one thing, um, pandemics and plagues aren't really all that uncommon. Uh, any cursory look at history, you'll see lots of events like this happening throughout all over, all over the world, throughout all of the years. Um, we got like the 1348 Black Death in Europe, and that's one of the biggest ones that have happened, or the 1918 flu pandemic. That was just 100 years ago, and it took out 20 to 100 million people, are the estimates. And there every year, every few decades, there are more virulent diseases that have happened, like in like the Hong Kong flu, or in 1957, or we've had SARS or H1N1. There are a few scares, and people do die, but it's oftentimes not as bad as some of these other um, instances, like the 1918 flu pandemic are now. But every 100 years, or every a few decades, you do get stuff that's more virulent than others, or you hit the lottery and you get something like COVID, or you get something like the Black Death, or the plague of Justinian, or I mean, even before 1980, that was when smallpox was eradicated. Smallpox was one of the biggest scourges that was ever to plague humanity. It has a death rate of like 30%. And you would have these waves that would go through societies, as more and more people, were born and weren't um, immune or resilient towards smallpox infection. You get a more susceptible buildup of the population, and then you'd have a wave of smallpox roll through. People would die, people would get resistant, and the process would repeat itself. And also, like with the Europeans coming from Europe to the Americas, um, oh my God, people talk about, like, the genocide of Native Americans. The conquest of the Americas would not have been able to have happened without smallpox. Um, when Europeans first came to the Americas, some of them did come carrying smallpox with them, because smallpox, it has a really long incubation period, and a really long course of the disease. So people got here and they were still carrying it. Um, so it got introduced to the natives, the native populations here, and wiped out like 90% of them. Like, there were huge scores of people who died here in the Americas because they had never been exposed to smallpox before. So the whole population here, native population here in the Americas, had absolutely no resistance to this disease. And like, that's why Cortez and a lot of the other conquistadors were able to do what they had done, even with like 400 people. That's what Cortez had. They took over Tenochtitlan, simply because smallpox, and manifest destiny, I guess, that's what they call it in the history books, of moving across North America and settling. Europeans settling in this area would not have been able to happen would not have been able to actually have happened if it hadn't been for smallpox. So these diseases are common, and they do a hell of a lot of damage, especially to, susceptible populations. And in this case, that's what we are. We're a susceptible population because it's a novel coronavirus. It's a coronavirus there are SARS and MERS, and a lot of cold viruses are also coronaviruses. And especially like with the cold viruses, we have, you know, we're less susceptible because it's something that comes every year. And even though we're not immune, we're more resilient to infection because, we've been exposed to, similar iterations of that virus. And in this case, that's not there. So that's why we're seeing more and more people who have, uh, bad reactions and severe symptoms to the coronavirus. So yeah, it's a force of nature, and it's not something that is totally new. So it's not going to be something that is like wrath of God, totally unique sort of thing. Um, the way I see it, pandemics are a part of nature. I don't know any other way that you can describe or say any other way about it, because a lot of these pandemics come from viruses that are novel in the sense that it's a spillover from animals. In the case, they think it came from bats, and with the coronavirus, and that happens a lot with like a lot of other like hemorrhagic fevers like Ebola or hantavirus, or no, hantavirus. I think that comes from mice. Yeah, I'm thinking of something else. I can't think of it right now. But there's a lot of diseases that come from animals that we catch, and we're not used to it. So, and if it starts easily infecting other humans, going from human to human transmission, that's where a lot of these, pandemics come from. But if that's the idea, pandemics are a part of nature, and nature is, I guess you could say, the Neteru's physical manifestation. I think I've explained it in some of my earlier videos. I believe that nature, the physical world, is the manifestation, or the bow. I think that's how it's pronounced, of gods, or the Neteru. So if that is the case, pandemics are a part of the Neteru. Um, just like the sun or the earth or air can be manifestations of Ra, or Geb, or Shu. A disease can be a manifestation of Sekhmet. So, and I don't think it's necessarily an evil thing, because some people are like, well, that would be like genocide. I mean, it's terrible. It's awful. And I agree that, you know, people are suffering. But at the same time, a lot of things in life are suffering. Um, and this isn't a particularly unique event. Um, it just is. Like a lioness hunting zebras or something like that. They take out the old and the weak. And just like the coronavirus taking out the old and the weak, I mean, it's not necessarily different. In this case, instead of a lioness and a zebra, it's coronavirus and humans. So I don't know. I mean, I guess if it's something you want to talk about, if this is something you disagree with, and you couldn't possibly fathom that the Neteru would actually create a disease to hurt people, please let me know in the comments, and please, explain further about what your beliefs are on the matter, because I'd like to know. If you have any other thoughts about the coronavirus and what's going on in more of a spiritual sense, I'd love to hear from you. Um, you know, uh, I don't want to say I have, I mean, I definitely don't have a monopoly on uh, anybody or anything in terms of like the occult or beliefs. I'm not a priestess, and I'm not a a counselor on any of these sorts of things, so I don't want to tell people, oh, this is what you have to believe, but, this is just my own personal perspective. And I guess I take solace or comfort in the fact that it's not a personal wrath of God thing, but I also take solace in the fact that, yeah, the gods are in control, and whatever happens, we'll see this through. And all I can do right now is follow the recommendations that have been laid out to us, and understanding about how viruses work and how they're spread, um, and act accordingly, and just keep the faith. Talk to your family, keep in touch with your friends and everything like that, and keep up your morale, because as history has also shown, these things do end. So, uh, with that, I wish you well, Synepti. Stay healthy, stay safe, and if you can, stay inside.